Cabin Sports Radio.
Here comes the siren. I want to go higher. Oh, my goodness. Keystone drive. Deep left field. No doubt about it. Posey will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
Oh, baby, for sure.
Cabin Sports Radio starts now.
Cabin Sports Radio back on the Cabin Radio airwaves for another week. Lecter and Unbreakable Mike Gibbons with you for another hour of sports chats. Lots to talk about this past weekend. This one, just a warning. I don't know if this is going to turn anyone off. None of our regular listeners, I'm sure, because they half expect this. It's going to be a hockey-heavy episode.
Yes.
Yeah. Little bit going on.
Yeah, we got at least 4 pretty heavy hockey stories. Some basketball. Lots going on in the sporting world, but yeah, a lot going on in the hockey universe over the weekend for sure.
I think that may have just encouraged my dad to just, keep listening.
Very, very good.
Not turn the show off. So that's good. Gare is locked in. Hopefully you are too. And Cabin Sports Radio is always brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. How was your weekend, Mike?
It was really good. Had some basketball on Friday and Sunday. Got a chance to take in a bit of the Scotties Tournament of Hearts.
Oh, nice.
On Saturday, helping a friend move. So we had that on in the background the whole time, and then ended up taking longer breaks than we should have. It wasn't a productive move at all.
No,
it was not efficient. We ended up spending most of the day watching curling. So
right.
that made for some fun. Didn't get a chance to see Team Carrie Galusha and her rink. Their game was postponed on Saturday anyways. Did resume play on Sunday. And then in their draw earlier today, losing to Team Canada, but that's okay. They'll be back against the second wildcard team tonight.
You know what? I was watching a little bit Sunday morning because very good friends of mine, Beth Peterson, is a member of that wildcard team.
That's right.
And so I was watching their game a little bit, and for the longest time, I was trying to figure out, what does WC stand for?
Oh, yeah.
I just I could not figure out that stood for wild card. I was like, Winnipeg Curling?
West Coast.
The West Coast
Curling Club.
And then when you mentioned there was just a team called the Wild Card team, I suddenly felt like a massive idiot.
That's okay. There are several. There's not just one wild card team. There are at least 3 in this draw. So strengthening the pool, if you will. We've got more entries, and the play is pretty good this year.
Right. Well, naturally, up here we have to cheer for Team Galusha,
of course,
representing the Northwest Territories. So go, Carrie, go! And without further ado, let's get into the show. Take a look at our CSR headlines.
Lecter, I'm going to go off the board here right away because here at Cabin Sports Radio, we have range. We cover a variety of sports. We're not just hockey guys. Been talking a lot of football recently. Basketball gets sprinkled in here and there. We talked about some curling off the top. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention the Australian Open was on last night. Novak Djokovic getting, I think, his 9th Australian Open title, which is just absurd. 8-0 going in. The only reason I mention it is because I had it on sort of in the background, TSN in the background last night, watching the second installment of the Lake Tahoe games, which we're going to get to immediately here. And they were teeing up the Australian Open. And really, me, the uninitiated, but really had me believing that Medvedev, who was Djokovic's challenger in the final, had a legitimate chance. He's played really good tennis of late, in really good form. He's knocked off most of the top 10s in the world. Just not so in this tournament, but leading up to the Australian Open final last night. And I'm sitting there as I'm doing chores in the background or
just
something.
Drinking
I was
the
like,
Kool-Aid.
you know what? Yeah.
I might put some money on this, actually.
And then I checked this morning because I didn't watch it, and Djokovic won in straight sets.
Oh, hey, well, you know.
And not particularly close in the last two, 6-2, 6-2. I think the first one was 7-5. So no surprise here. Your 2021 Australian Open winner, Novak Djokovic, and his record 9th title.
That's some tasty clickbait right there for you.
Yep. They like you said, though, they had me drinking the Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah.
But I was getting in over my head because in the end, it wasn't as close as some of the pundits had me believing. We will immediately switch gears to the NHL. And the NHL's Lake Tahoe outdoor game between the Colorado Avalanche and Vegas Golden Knights ended under the lights on Saturday night after it was paused for over 8 hours because of deteriorating ice conditions during the first period of play. The game started shortly after noon local time, that's Pacific time, but didn't resume until after 9 p.m. once issues with the ice were resolved. Colorado would go on to win the game by a score of 3-2.
I bet the NHL has never been so happy to not have a live audience to deal with.
Yes.
Man, that worked out nicely, eh?
Yeah. So, Lake Tahoe, centrally located in Nevada, United States.
Yeah.
We are in desert territory here. This scene was beautiful.
Yes.
It was really, really nice.
Did you see some of the pictures, the NHL's Instagram and stuff they were sharing, pictures from the crease?
Yes.
Where you just got the whole rink in front of you and then the mountains just laying beyond, absolutely breathtaking stuff.
100%.
And you got to wonder, when you look back now, because this game was originally, there was plans to do it in possibly Lake Louise, Alberta,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's not out the window. I think there's the door is still open for future games to be held at Lake Louise. Yeah.
Okay. So, I was kind of under the understanding that there was a shift in gears and they decided to do it Lake Tahoe instead. You know, who knows why? I'm sure there was many reasons. And then, like you say, Lake Louise may still happen. But it just struck me, especially when you saw, the highlights of the game after it was delayed. Did they even finish a full first period before it was delayed?
I think they got through the first.
Yeah, okay.
And then the teams were sent to the dressing room. I don't know if you saw the clips during the game.
Oh my God.
One player wiping out.
It looked like sports hockey.
Yeah, it was an ODR.
Yeah.
And it got into some pretty rough shape. Of course, by the time it started, is when the sun's at its highest, 12 local time.
Yeah.
Just beaming down, which was causing issues around the rink, which then made its way into the rink as well, and just wasn't safe enough. But to your point, thank goodness there weren't 30 to 50,000 spectators there, because the players, it's one thing, and they were sort of held in their respective locker rooms for a while after the first period, until the announcement was made by Commissioner Gary Bettman. No, we're going to send you home, and then after all was done, 8 hours pass, and they're able to resume the game at midnight Eastern time. So 9 Pacific time. We're able to finish it, but the viewership would have dropped off significantly by the time she got underway again.
It's actually kind of shocking that they were even able to finish that game the same day. Some of the clips they showed, close-ups of how the ice was looking.
Oh, yeah.
Just horrific gouges in the ice. And several players they showed clips of, just taking spills out of nowhere. And frankly, it's surprising that nobody turned an ankle, or got even, somewhat injured. That is dangerous playing conditions. We've all played on an outdoor rink that has, various cracks in it. And you're just kind of as you're playing, you're all right, avoid that spot. It was literally puters were sinking into the ice as they were trying to move at high speed. All it takes is one misplaced collision while a blade is digging into the ice, and you get a broken ankle immediately.
Some pretty significant gouges.
Yeah.
There's always Mother Nature always has something to say with these events.
Yeah.
Hey, was it one of the? So now they've always got sort of the annual stadium series. There's always, of course, the Winter Classic shortly after the New Year, which was the pinnacle outdoor event. And now it seems like they're popping up all over the place.
Yeah. Became a moneymaker,
yes,
so they just started piling it on.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, you can some of these venues are much larger than traditional NHL stadium, so it is definitely a moneymaker, and it's a spectacle too.
Yeah.
Even tuning in from home, it's a pretty special event.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I know the conversation has sort of floated around, is enough? Like, I know that it's a moneymaker. We're trying to monetize these games, but are they special anymore when we're having so many of them? And we've seen more recently that the Mother Nature's kind of gotten in the way and dampened some of these plans.
Yeah.
I think there was a really heavy snowfall during one of the most recent ones.
I think the first one also. Yeah, there was like that Montreal. Was it Montreal Edmonton? And the first one back in like 2003 or something like that. And Jose Theodore with the classic toque on top of the goalie mask, which is just like an iconic look now.
Yeah.
There's just been throughout the years, like you mentioned, it seems like Mother Nature has always kind of had it out for the outdoor games. Ironically, I remember the one in LA like last year, the year before, actually going pretty smoothly.
Yeah.
Considered, which was a bit bizarre. But yeah, you kind of got a little bit of maybe it's jumped the shark sense after this one, because it looked so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, as far as like putting pictures on the gram goes, the NHL was killing it this weekend. But as far as actually executing a hockey game went, the fact that you could start that game, I'm sure there were ice makers all over the country just watching, this game with like just a sense of impending doom in their heads, thinking like there's no way. There's no way that these ice conditions are going to hold up. And probably even the ice makers that was on site was probably like just kind of, I hope no one gets hurt. Like, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of pressure to make this go ahead. It's being televised. We want to, just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, when you're playing, you're playing on a football field or something like that, generally, field conditions are a factor, but they're not going to be necessarily dangerous.
Yeah.
They might make for a terrible game, but there's not really a risk of someone literally breaking an ankle just from turning in the wrong spot. This definitely crept into dangerous territory.
Yeah.
But they got through it. Eventually, they got the game finished. But like we said off the top, man, the NHL has probably never been so happy to not have live crowds. That could have turned into a City of Yellowknife Santa Claus drive-through parade.
Oh, yeah.
It had that kind of potential written all over it.
You know what I'm thinking about, actually, and I know that we touched on it on this show. Was it one of the events last year? I don't think it was the Stadium Series when they had that special game. I want to say it was Minnesota when they had that traffic disaster where there was like one road in to the stadium or something like that.
Half the crowd didn't even get there.
There were reports of families being literally stranded on the road for 4 hours or something like that. They left with ample time to get to the stadium and they couldn't even get in. So that in itself, a really serious issue. You've got with the sun, of course, you've got it beaming down, which can affect the ice surface, and then the glare. So that's another element that the players will have to deal with.
Right.
Didn't hear of anything in the second installment, which was the Boston Bruins against the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah.
Last night, and again, like you said, picturesque, really, really breathtaking scenery. And I think all went well in the second installment of this year's Lake Tahoe games.
Yeah, I didn't hear much about that.
No, but certainly there are issues to work out in the first.
Yeah.
That was the event that I was thinking to. The one I think it was last year.
Yeah, good memory. I feel like it was St. Louis.
Yeah.
Maybe
it was in. I think it was in a football stadium. It was a really, really big venue.
Right.
And I remember there being like one or two ways in, and traffic was just a nightmare. So most of the people some people didn't even take the game in. It was that bad.
Yeah.
Logistically, it was a bit of a fail, and I think they also delayed the start of that game for that reason. So always working out these extra issues that happen when they put on these grand events,
these unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah. Kudos for trying, but logistically have proved to be pretty challenging in recent years.
Yeah. Oh well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
All for the gram, right?
That's right. Let's shift gears to Sidney Crosby, who was honored by the Pittsburgh Penguins in a ceremony before playing in his 1,000th NHL game on Saturday. Crosby is the first player ever to play 1,000 games for the club. The three-time Stanley Cup champion is second in Penguins history with 468 goals, 808 assists, and 1,276 points, trailing only Mario Lemieux in each category.
They were talking, of course, a little bit about this on Hockey Night in Canada between periods, between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Montreal Canadiens game, and so the topic came up. Of course, as you might imagine, Sidney Crosby, one of those generational talents, playing a milestone 1,000th NHL game, which, if you consider the fact that he's 33 years old, he lost at least one entire season to concussion issues.
Yep.
Years ago. I mean, that was quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
He's been pretty healthy for the most part since those couple of troubling years where, way before we ever should have been questioning, is this the end of Sidney Crosby's career? We were actually having serious conversations about that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that was a scary time, He's adapted his game since then. He plays a different game than the 18, 19, 20-year-old Sidney Crosby that broke into the league. Still just as effective, still arguably the best player in the game. Doesn't play with the kind of fearlessness that anymore that like a Connor McDavid does, but without question, still the smartest player in the game.
Yep.
And so the question came up, where does he rank all time?
Yeah.
As you might have imagined.
Saw a lot of that floating around this weekend.
And I gotta say, I was shocked to hear it be so widely accepted that he was top 3 all time. According to the Hockey Night in Canada panel, it was Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Sidney Crosby.
Yeah. I thought it was even a stretch. I hadn't seen top 5. That's what I saw was top 5. And to me, even, I don't want to say it felt like a stretch, but I think I was just surprised.
Yeah.
And maybe you are when it's different when you grow up watching that person. You don't have a full appreciation for the generations that came in before him.
Yeah.
So we were lucky enough to get to watch him from when he entered the league, when he was in his physical prime, to the player he is now, only a couple years removed from his 3rd Stanley Cup. So it's hard sort of without that historical context. But then, when you pull everything into focus and see the big picture, that I was seeing the same thing, that he does deserve to be in that conversation when you're talking the top 5 or the top 3 of all time. And as soon as you're in that stratosphere and you're mentioned in the same sentence as obviously those two, Wayne Gretzky, you're undisputed, best as far as the NHL goes. When you want to talk, and they always have these GOAT conversations, we talk about them pretty frequently on the show, in the NBA and NFL landscapes as well, because there's the greatest of all time. Then, maybe there's the most talented of all time.
Right.
Mario Lemieux. I think his points per game numbers would have been just a hair under Gretzky's.
Yeah.
Didn't have that same longevity.
Right.
But, man, we talk about probably the most talented to ever lace up the skates. And so it's tough for someone like Sidney Crosby because he played in the same organization as someone like Mario Lemieux.
Yes.
Who put up ridiculous numbers in his time with Pittsburgh. So you're always going to draw comparisons there. But certainly the most talented and the most accomplished and the best of his generation. And that's going up against someone like Alexander Ovechkin year in and year out, widely regarded as one of the best pure goal scorers ever. But he's right there. Crosby is right there in that conversation, and his name should be there.
And there's something to be said about, just a player who right from day one has been like since his first game in the NHL, the spotlight has been squarely focused on him. Now, anytime it was Ovechkin versus Crosby, that's always been, a marquee game because they entered the league at the same time. They were, a generational talent from Russia versus a generational talent from Canada, the two supreme international hockey powers, and these being the best players of their generation pitted against each other. Always fun to watch. Alex Ovechkin contributed a nice little send-off or a congratulations video to Sidney Crosby, as did many other former and current NHL players. Some of his teammates in a little package they showed before his 1,000th game. I don't know if you saw his. Of course, they all donned Sidney Crosby jerseys. The Pittsburgh Penguins did during warm-up, and also all took part in his pregame warm-up routine. Which was very funny. And fun to watch. But yeah, the top 3 all time. I had to take a moment and kind of sit back and think, okay, Gretzky's the default. Number 1. As far as hockey goes. Lemieux, like you said, probably talent wise is probably the default number 2. But Gordy who? Bobby who? That it kind of took me by surprise. I personally growing up as a defenseman, I always argued that Bobby Orr should have been the greatest of all time. And if he had played, a full career, he only played 10 seasons. And it wasn't even a full 10 seasons. His last couple of years in the league were very, very full of injuries and knee problems, that cut his career tragically short. And he was still the best player on the ice, even playing, essentially on one leg. He changed the way defensemen play in the NHL. He basically invented a position, which is the puck moving defenseman. Before that, you were just supposed to be a not a pylon, but
you operate on one end of the rink.
Exactly. Like just kind of a boulder that's hard to get around, and you block shots, but you certainly don't lead the league in scoring.
No.
You certainly don't, score like almost 50 goals. That was completely unheard of, and even since Bobby Orr is completely unheard of. So when you look down his body of work, and then you combine the fact that he was, he didn't need a Dave Semenko. There was no, they had players. The Boston Bruins, of course, had players that, if need be, were going to protect Bobby Orr's back, but he didn't need that. Not only could he lead the team in scoring, he might have also led the team in penalty minutes as well. Like he was not a guy who you needed to protect. And that probably ultimately did not help his lack of longevity as far as his career goes. But as far as just the premier, you want to talk greatest hockey player of all time, someone who put it all together. It's inescapable. You can't have that argument without having, in my mind, Bobby Orr in the top 3. And it's nothing against Sidney Crosby, because I've always been blown away by Sidney Crosby's toughness, despite, his lack of size. Not a big guy, strong as probably anyone in the league, because he absolutely dedicated his life and his career to fitness outside of the rink, doing anything it takes to become a better hockey player, and to be able to compete physically, and especially once his injuries started to creep in. I think there was, probably a point where he knew that you needed to rededicate and kind of shift focus a bit away from speed and, focus on some other angles. But I think you're right. I think there is probably something to the fact that we all have, including the Hockey Night in Canada panel, we have seen Sidney Crosby play throughout his career. We've seen all of the special things that he can do and has done and does year after year. And it's hard when you have that kind of exposure to not put him kind of on a pedestal, and not to say that he doesn't deserve these kinds of accolades, or to at least be in the conversation. But it kind of shocked me to hear, just the names like Gordie Howe and Bobby Orr seemingly kind of be pushed aside. Yeah, in that conversation. But without question, a top 5 all-time talent.
Yeah. Which in itself is crazy to think about. It's hard, and I enjoy these conversations and like friendly debates with friends and everything like that. But it's so hard to place everything in the same context. You could have a situation where someone is the greatest ever, but someone else over here is the greatest all-around player ever.
Right.
This third person has the greatest career ever.
Yes.
But, I guess the greats really tie as much of that together as they possibly can. When you're looking at, just a success on a personal and a team level, 3 Stanley Cups, which is better than anyone else in his generation, except for maybe, like a Taves and a Patrick Kane. Do they have the same longevity of greatness? No. Do they have the same individual stats? No. But then you tie in, if you just want to talk about an entire winning resume, I think he won a World Junior Hockey Championship.
Yep. He was on that, like the greatest World Junior team. Yeah, with like Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry, Shane Weber. Just
pretty good.
A ridiculously good, World Junior team. That I probably carried Sidney Crosby, if anything.
Yeah. 2 Olympic gold medals, of course, scoring the golden goal in the best Winter Olympics in recent memory, 2010 in Vancouver. And then, of course, on the team, I guess, in 2014 in Sochi, the world, what's the championship? The World Cup of Hockey.
Right.
Another victory there. Art Ross. There's got to be some hearts in there.
Yeah, won a Maurice Richard Trophy.
Yeah, that's right.
Mean, that was another indication of the evolution of Sidney Crosby's game, because when he broke into the league, he was a playmaker. He'd score you like 30 to 35 goals, but generally he was putting up like 80 assists. That was what was making the difference with his stats. But then I think he's had 2 50-goal seasons.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. And that when he broke into the league, that was not something you would have expected. But he's continued to evolve, continued to find ways to thrive, and scarily become a better player.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story early on that, it was one of his first All-Star games, and I can't remember the player that he was talking to, but he basically just he went up to them, and it was one of the best face-off men in the league at the time. I can't remember who it was, but I remember them, saying how Crosby, that was all he was interested in. He was just like, I want to learn how to get better at face-offs. And he was just picking this guy's brain, and that, again, that was something that he had to work on. He was not a great face-off man, but it's something he worked on. He developed a skill, and it's something where a player like Sidney Crosby, you could have easily gotten by without really that being part of your arsenal. But that's not the type of player he was. He's someone who wants to be the best in every regard. And quite frankly, you don't win 3 Stanley Cups unless you are a player like that. And that kind of attitude, that kind of work ethic, that trickles down to the players around you. Doesn't hurt that he's had one of the best Russian players of all time as a teammate.
That's right.
Evgeny Malkin. They've had, and the amazing thing too with that, those two has been anytime that Crosby has not been available, Malkin has stepped up.
Oh, yeah.
And vice versa. If Malkin was ever injured, Crosby just seemed to take his game to another level, which you wouldn't think, because you think if one of the two was out, it's easier to key on one.
Yeah.
But they would just raise their
elevate
game.
their play.
So I mean, there's not enough good things you could say about Sidney Crosby. He's been an absolute role model from day one.
Yep.
Again, another one of these situations where it's an 18-year-old player who, even before he got drafted in the NHL, 16 years old, he was being touted as a generational, the next one type player.
Yep.
It's so easy for those types of guys to have the pressure get to them and crumble, or just have, some kind of slip up because you're 16, you're 17, and you've got the whole world watching you already. It's so much pressure. And the fact that he has, throughout his career, handled that with the grace and the absolute class of someone like a Wayne Gretzky or a Mario Lemieux, it's just another reason to love Sidney Crosby, that you could, if you had a young kid and you were looking for someone to for them to look at as a role model, you could always point to Sidney Crosby and say, be like that guy.
His Russian teammate Evgeny Malkin will likely become the second ever Penguin to hit 1,000 games. I think he's sitting at around 920 right now, so he'll soon be joining him, and he deserves to be mentioned in that conversation too for the greatest Pittsburgh Penguins to ever lace him up. I think the one trophy that's really escaped him so far in his career has been the Selke. Which I found interesting, because I thought maybe he would have squeaked one in here and there, because he's such an excellent all-around player that you thought that he would have secured that one of these years. But it to this day has eluded him, but he's always been in the top 10, making his way into the top 5 in voting. So that tells you that he's committed to the 200-foot game. I'm personally surprised he hadn't won one, but you mentioned his honing on his face-off craft. An excellent playmaker, but can score with the best of them, and is just a winner through and through. So that's why I think I was surprised to learn that he wasn't recognized as one of the best defensive forwards in the game. But it was really those two straight Stanley Cup, was it 2016 and 2017 that cemented it. I mean, his legacy was already cemented, I think, with the one, but then the Olympic gold medals, the World Junior, the World Cup of Hockey, all his individual stats. Then getting those two was really the icing on the cake. So without a doubt, the best of his generation. I wonder if maybe 20 years from now or 10 years from now we're sitting here again because Connor McDavid just hit his 500th career point in the exact same amount of games as Sidney Crosby, which was 369. So, and we know how special of a hockey player he is. So always fun to have these conversations. There have just been so many greats who have played the game. So that's why it's kind of tough to sort of put everything into a ranking, if you will. But I mean, if you're being mentioned with those names, the Gretzkys,
you're doing something right.
The Lemieux, the Orrs, and the Howes, or not mentioned in this case, much to the chagrin of my partner here. You're doing something right. And he deserves to have his name mentioned with the likes of all of them, because, like you said, he puts it all together. A role model on and off the ice, and a winner. At the end of the day, that's what he does. He's committed to winning, and he's done it on the highest level. And you know what? Quite frankly, he may have won a Selke trophy already had he not had his old World Junior buddy and teammate to contend with. Patrice Bergeron. Just always hanging around, being pesky. As I think he had a video tribute to some members of the Boston Bruins did. I'm pretty sure Patrice was one of them for Crosby's 1,000th game. Nothing from Brad Marchand? I don't think so. Oh, okay. I could be wrong. But I did enjoy the skate tying, the whole team getting together, which was, of course, his pregame ritual. We talk about superstitious and pregame rituals on the show a couple times, but that's his, tying his skates, relacing them on the ice. And with his whole team wearing number 87, they all partook in that together. What do you say we turn to the not-so-nice side of hockey? New York Rangers star Artemi Panarin is taking a leave of absence from the team after a Russian tabloid printed allegations that he attacked a woman in Latvia almost 10 years ago. The allegations, which he's denied, were brought forward by one of Panarin's former coaches. He claims he was motivated to shed light on the incident now because of Panarin's repeated criticism of the Russian government. Yeah, apparently Artemi Panarin has had the gall to put on his social media his support for Vladimir Putin's political opponents. Right. And as we know, all of a sudden you've done some really bad things in your past that nobody knew about and seem to come out of nowhere when you say things against Vladimir Putin, who of course is perfect in every conceivable way. Cabin Sports Radio, big fans.
No, we'll just stop there. This sucks.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously, we are in an age where what a common refrain you hear is believe the victims. Mm-hmm. We don't know if there actually is a victim in this case, which is why, on top of anything else, where if you look anything into this story, there is an obviously massive grain of salt that anything about this needs to be taken with. Andre Nazarov is the name of the former coach and a former NHL player who has indicated that there was some incident supposedly 10 years ago. And it's like I say, we're in an age now where you believe the victim, and it's frankly disgusting that someone would basically try to twist that type of social narrative because of their political leanings. So I don't necessarily know what is behind the leave of absence.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that
I think he's genuinely shook by and concerned.
And he's got family in Russia. I assume that's part of the concern. I mean, I don't know if he's planning on going home for.
I wouldn't be going back to Russia anytime soon.
I don't know. I don't really know what a leave of absence does for Artemi Panarin in this case, but obviously there's a lot going on. In his mind, I'm sure. So I'm sure he's concerned about the safety of his family, which is just ludicrous that should even be a concern for him when you are just talking about expressing political views, and I mean, this is another reminder that we are living in a very different country than Russia.
Yep.
And it obviously sucks for the New York Rangers. It obviously sucks for Artemi Panarin and his family, and it's just frankly disgusting that this seems in someone's mind, obviously Andre Nazarov's mind, or maybe he's being told by someone to say it. Like I don't know. I can't comprehend the sick mind that this would occur to, that this is okay.
Yeah.
Or this is, it's disgusting.
I think even on the record as saying he was motivated to come forward with this story solely because of Panarin's repeated criticism of the Russian government. So right there, he's admitting his own bias.
And bright red flag.
Why he's coming forward with this in the first place.
And how the two have anything to do with one another. Is just,
claiming that, the only reason that this alleged incident wasn't pursued further was because there was some exchange of funds and basically some hush money was involved. This coming at a time when the New York Rangers don't really need any more distractions. They've already had the incident with Tony DeAngelo not even that long ago. We're trying to figure things out in the Big Apple. Panarin, obviously, their brightest star after signing that big off-season deal a couple of years ago. A team that should be pretty good, but have had their struggles to start the season. But you want someone like Artemi Panarin in the fold. He's a really, really good hockey player, but is taking some time now because I think he's genuinely shook and concerned that these allegations have come to light. And is probably processing them. We saw, ahead of the American election not too long ago, how delicate our democracy is in the Western world, and that can be applied anywhere. Of course, not a democratic state in Russia. So government is fragile.
Right.
So, and it appears that there's motive here on the part of Nazarov, and he's kind of gone on the record as saying it, which is alarming. So, hopefully not too much more comes of this. because he's a really good hockey player. First, you hope the story isn't true, but you just question the source of where it's coming from and all the ties to, I guess there have been reports that Panarin's, attended anti-Putin rallies and has been critical in social media posts before. And word of that gets around, and we've seen what happens to detractors and opposition of the regime in Russia. So you hope that nothing else comes of this, nothing serious, and that it's really just a distraction in the end, and we can all move on. Yeah,
and I mean, obviously none of us, except for Artemi Panarin and anyone else close to him, knows for certain if there is any type of actual legs to this story. But I think, if I'm to make a guess, and I feel pretty confident about this, again, with today's political climate in mind, of which the NHL and its affiliated clubs are very aware and very cognizant of, I don't think you would have the strong statement that the New York Rangers put out saying, in no uncertain terms, we are fully in support of Artemi Panarin. Very much like, he's our guy. We're behind him all the way. You remember when Slava Voinov had allegations of abuse?
When he was with the Kings?
Domestic abuse with a partner with the LA Kings. The LA Kings statement was not that same type of tone as the New York Rangers. And I don't think it's because the LA Kings are more woke than the New York Rangers.
Right.
I don't think that's the case at all. I think if there was any chance, any thought, any possibility that this may have happened and it warranted a serious investigation, I think the New York Rangers as a club would have been a lot more careful with their wording, and there would be a very delicate press release saying, we have decided to, part ways for the time being. The fact that the New York Rangers as a club were willing to just, in no uncertain terms, say, he's our guy, we 100% support him, that indicates to me that this is all a bunch of BS. And, if I'm wrong, I will. I'll be blown away, as I'm sure many other people will be now. But it's an infuriating story that this is even something that Artemi Panarin has to deal with now. Absolutely hope and wish the best for him and his family, and hopefully, he can have. Not be having to worry about this and just get back to hockey as soon as possible. And I don't know if there's much more to say about it.
It is very telling, though, like you said, how a team responds to something like this, and what sort of statement they put forward. The Toronto Raptors dealing with a little of that right now. With Terrence Davis Jr., with domestic assault allegations, and some of them are still before the courts. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot more of these come to light recently, but teams respond usually pretty appropriately, condemning that type of behavior. This in no way reflects the values and the views of the organization. We want to separate ourselves from this as much as possible. While this is our guy, we do not accept what he did or what it's alleged that he did. We don't want to be attached to that because it strongly is against what we're for. And you would see a team respond that way. And we're not seeing that here. So they've got their guys back, and hopefully we can move beyond this.
The Cabin Sports Radio Podcast, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward.
Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you each and every week by Sport North, moving sport forward. Check out sportnorth.com for everything going on with sport in the North, and maybe take a thought to donating towards the Kids Sport NWT program, which is facilitated by Sport North, a fantastic program to keep kids active in the North, and a reminder that all money raised in the North stays in the North. Check it out, sportnorth.com/KidSport NWT.
Former NHL boss Mike Babcock is joining the University of Saskatchewan Huskies as the team's next head coach. This is Babcock's first head coaching job since he was fired by the Maple Leafs in November of 2019. He'll officially take on his new role in May. While his teams have had success on the ice, some of Babcock's coaching tactics have come under fire in recent years, including allegations of verbal abuse and hazing.
And we talked about Mike Babcock finally kind of breaking his silence with regards to the Mitch Marner story a couple weeks ago, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. There were some tones of he genuinely seemed to accept that there were some things, some mistakes he made, and that things that he could have done better. And I think Mike Babcock is a smart enough guy that he's gonna learn from those mistakes. I don't see him going into, the University of Saskatchewan program and pulling a player aside. Yeah, all right. Here, you've heard the stories.
Yeah.
Here we go. Pull out your pen and paper. Who's the hardest worker and who's the laziest? 1, 2, 24. Write them down.
Yeah, we saw how that worked out, and it wasn't particularly great. So he gets another chance now. Around the same time that he broke his silence was when it was announced that he was joining NBC. I guess that was short-lived.
Right, yeah.
As an in-studio analyst for NBC, replacing Mike Milbury, who was jutted out. But short-lived. So he's taken on this new position in May. One of the more accomplished head coaches, NHL head coaches of his generation, winning the cup with Detroit back in 2009, I think it was, maybe 2008.
2008.
There's 2 years in a row that they played the Penguins.
Yeah.
The Penguins won once, and the Red Wings, I think, got the first. So you're right. And then, of course, at the helm with Team Canada for 1 or 2 Olympic gold medals.
He was at least the 2014 head coach. Yeah, I can't remember if he was head coach for 2010.
Yeah, but regardless, one of the more accomplished NHL head coaches of his time.
Yeah.
So the resume is good, but I think the reason why he's been in the headlines a lot more recently is what goes on behind the scenes. Some former NHLers coming out and not saying some very nice things about how he handled his business, either in Detroit or in Toronto. But gets a chance. Goes back to his hockey roots with the University of Saskatchewan. That's, of course, where he's from. I think it's on a volunteer basis for the first.
Really?
I think I read that for the first 2 years, anyways. Of course, a lot of play was suspended last year due to COVID-19, but he'll get a chance to write a new chapter. And like you said, did take ownership of especially the Marner incident, where he was asked to list the work ethics of all his teammates. That was a mistake. That was my fault. That shouldn't have gone out there. Completely taken ownership, and has said that he's made efforts to sort of patch some wounds with some previous. Who was it with Detroit?
I think it was Johan Franzen.
That's it. Yeah, to sort of mend the fence a little bit. But haven't been able to connect there. So he'll get a chance to start anew in May, and hopefully we don't hear any allegations coming out shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think we will. He was still a fairly young coach. That was one of the things that was kind of remarkable about Mike Babcock, because he had a fairly quick rise to prominence and into a head coaching position. Took the Anaheim Mighty Ducks to a Stanley Cup final against the New Jersey Devils in 2003, which seems like a lifetime ago. And then had a lot of success with the Detroit Red Wings, who obviously, he came in at a time where that was already a deeply established franchise. So
22 straight years of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
That was only snapped recently.
Although, they haven't fared so well since he left.
No.
But and then of course the Toronto years and what transpired there by now have been pretty well documented. As far as the head coaching on a volunteer basis, I mean, I guess that's okay, because I think he's still getting paid by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Probably.
I think he's got another. Maybe another year.
Was it an 8-year?
It was, yeah.
I remember the introductory press conference. This is how quickly time goes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Him saying that, by the time his contract is up, this team is going to be so good that I'm not going to want to leave it. Well, ultimately, he didn't get to make that decision. He was sent packing after a couple disappointing first-round exits, and the team sort of
But
plateaued.
hey, the team's looking pretty good.
They're looking good under Sheldon Keefe. Number one. We were talking about this last week. Number one in the North and number one in the entire NHL right now. It's weird to see them at the top of power rankings. But yeah, another chapter for Mike Babcock, and he'll take that on in May.
I would have to think, yeah. He's definitely made some mistakes.
Yep.
I think he's a smart enough guy, and I not that I know Mike Babcock personally, but I get the sense that he's genuine enough to have honestly acknowledged those. He wasn't just putting on a show in that interview.
Mm-hmm.
I think he genuinely does feel remorse for the way he treated some of his former players. It was all a learning experience for him as well. Mm-hmm. So I wish him nothing but the best. Frankly, I'm happy to see him back behind the bench, because now my Mike Bab socks are not just like a relic of the past anymore. They're back into relevancy. They're not green like the Huskies.
Yeah.
Still the Maple Leafs blue, but nevertheless, the Bab Sox get some new life.
They come back out.
So that's exciting. But yeah, I wish him absolute success, and I think he'll do well.
A lot of time for some inflection, because he's been largely out of the public eye since the firing in November of 2019. Outside of that interview not too long ago, where we found out about his new gig with NBC, we hadn't heard anything from him. So I'm sure a lot of time for some self-reflection, and he's not going to take that lightly, has admitted his wrongs, and gets a chance to start anew.
I think this is a better place for him too, honestly.
Yeah,
because if you have a somewhat disgraced former NHL coach, now suddenly being a TV analyst, it's hard to watch that and take someone seriously. Yeah. Especially if he ever got into a conversation where he was criticizing a current head coach or something, like some kind of tax would be like, what do you know, Babs? You had Mitch Marner write a list from blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And so I think this is a chance for him to honestly take what you kind of mentioned, undoubtedly the time that he has reflected on this and try to make good. Mm-hmm. Try to improve on the things that he has no doubt learned about himself as a person, and hopefully get a little bit of a chance for redemption. Mm-hmm. I think for Mike Babcock is what I'm trying to say here. So salute to him, and hope he does well at the University of Saskatchewan.
Go back to his roots in Saskatoon and get a chance to oversee the operation there.
Should we talk about something other than hockey?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe you want to switch gears to some basketball.
Yeah, why not?
The Toronto Raptors have clawed their way back into the playoff picture after a dismal start to the season. After losing 8 of their first 10, the Raps have gone 14-7 and now sit one game above 500. Good enough for 5th in the Eastern Conference. The club has also earned some marquee wins over that stretch, including 2 wins over Milwaukee, 1 over Philadelphia, and 1 over the New Look Nets.
7-3 in their last 10.
Yep.
Suddenly the, second hottest team in the Eastern Conference behind the Brooklyn Nets. But it seems like it's an abomination that they've lost any games at all with the roster they have. So what is the difference, Mr. Mike Gibbons?
Yes, well, you'll probably recall that's when in the game they played against Brooklyn was when they had that weird COVID health and safety protocol incident where Durant was not allowed to start, but then was allowed to play in the first quarter.
Right. Yeah.
And then halfway through, they all come out, whoa, you might have been in contact with someone, but we're just going to take you out of this game. Forget the other 10 people you've been, playing against for the last 10 minutes. For the last, better part of an hour.
Right.
We're just going to take you out. Yeah. Anyways, still a really good win for the Toronto Raptors to get that one over the Nets. They sweep a home and home with the Milwaukee Bucks last week. which was pretty surprising. And then just last night against the Philadelphia 76ers, a fully healthy first place Philadelphia 76ers. They held Embiid to terrible numbers. Fresh off of, so he's, I think, number one for the MVP ladder right now, fresh off of a 50-point game. And Toronto holds him to 23 and some pretty dismal shooting numbers. So, things are, and that was without Kyle Lowry, who didn't play last night. OG Anunoby is growing up before our eyes. Fred VanVleet, steady Fred. He is as efficient, as productive as ever, putting the team on his back for stretches. Pascal has sort of shook off the early season rust. He's becoming more reliable. Norm Powell, oh my goodness, he's looked really good of late as well. And Chris Boucher giving them really good minutes at the 5 position. He's given up a lot of size. He's undersized. He's scrawny, but his length will get him multiple blocks a game, and he can check some of the longer players. Not so much the really physical players, because he has given up a lot of size down there. But shot blocking, now he's got a pretty respectable 3-point shot. So defenses have to stay honest. And rebounding. So interior defense, rebounding, and now he can stretch the floor a little bit, in addition to offensive rebounding. So he's giving them some really, really good minutes. And even Aaron Baines had some good minutes last night against Joel Embiid. So things definitely starting to click, and beating really good teams, which is a good sign. And making a little bit of a home for themselves down in Tampa.
A little bit of depth. Stepping up and making an impact. Do you think this is staving off the Kyle Lowry trade rumors?
Yeah, that's the big question, and there'll have to be some.
Because, I mean, they're 5th place in the Eastern Conference now.
Yeah.
So that's like, I don't know if that's probably good enough, especially with the streak that they've been on lately. That, like you mentioned, 14-7 in their last 21 games. Like that puts them in the last 20. The top echelon of NBA teams. So there's probably no reason to think why they can't keep it up? Question mark.
And like someone like Kyle Lowry, who we've said on the show is the most decorated rat. He's the best Raptor of all time. Maybe someone like him. Either way, I feel like if he went up to Masai Ujiri or Bobby Webster and said, maybe it is time that I go somewhere else, somewhere like Philadelphia, where he's from, and just being the floor general he is at the point guard position. First of all, he's going to make any team better.
Right.
But there are some teams with more immediate needs at that position, and Philadelphia could be one of them as a natural fit. It's where he's from. They could use someone in that position, even though they have someone like Ben Simmons. Maybe they bring him off the ball a little bit more, and he can still be lethal in the open court and operate as a slasher off of such a good playmaker and ball handler and shooter as Kyle Lowry. But I think that decision ultimately rests with Kyle.
Right.
So no matter what, if the organization, if things do start to cool off here and they're slipping into like a lower seeded playoff position or even on the bubble outside looking in, those conversations I'm sure will happen, but they would keep someone like Kyle Lowry apprised of those. You're not going to surprise your best player in franchise history and say, "Hey, by the way, we're trading you."
Right.
So he'll have a say in, I think, any direction that the team goes. But now sort of the conversation has shifted to, can this team become a buyer?
Right.
And some of the names being thrown around are Andre Drummond, because the Cavaliers have a massive surplus of bigs, with Kevin Love, Jared Allen, JaVale McGee, Andre Drummond. So they've got some guys that they'll definitely have to move before the trade deadline. And Drummond is the most attractive of those for a good return for the Cavaliers. So that name's out there. And then even there might be some people on the buyout market after the trade deadline. So yeah, just based on how well they've been playing lately, they've shifted the conversation of, is this team going to be are they going to be buyers or sellers come the trade deadline? And maybe that's the avenue they go. Drummond would fill a need at the 5 position because they are giving up some size in some of those bigger matchups, like Joel Embiid and Giannis in the East, anyways, because that's where you got to come out of. But those are the conversations that they'll have to have. And maybe it's shifted now. Maybe they are in a position to become buyers.
Yeah, and at the very least, even if even if they're still kind of in a bubble position, 20 games from now, they're still like maybe in the 5th, 6th, 7th spot, like good enough to make the playoffs, but maybe you're not so sure if it's like if you're looking to buy because you think, well, we might give up some future assets and then get knocked out in the first round. That doesn't get you really anywhere. At the very least, it's got to be, you'd think it would raise Kyle Lowry's trade value a little bit, because they're kind of in a position where it's like, we're going to make the playoffs, or at least we're reasonably confident we're going to make the playoffs. And, once the playoffs start, anything can happen from there. So you would think that if they continued along their horrible start, the 2-8 that they started out with, say they were still like kind of in the basement of the Eastern Conference, teams may come calling for Kyle Lowry, and they're just like, well, we may as well just trade, we may as well just take what we can get for him. In this position, you're kind of like, well, yeah, we'd be interested to hear offers, but you're going to have to give us something good, because all we need to do is make the playoffs. Yeah. Who knows what happens after that? So, it's very obvious to say that winning is good. Yeah. But this definitely helps the team overall. That you maybe get to the point where they actually are buyers rather than just interested sellers. Yeah. Seeing what's out there, what's being offered.
I think they continue this trajectory though. It took it was going to take them a little bit of time, and 2-8 was a very rough start. But it was going to take them time to adjust with Marc Gasol and the departures of Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. Mark going on to have a pretty rough start with the Los Angeles Lakers. He is regressing in the later stages of his career. Yeah. Haven't caught much of Ibaka in LA, but that was a tough blow for the Raptors. Yeah. So they're that's a new offense. He was very versatile in the 4 position. The basketball is positionless now, so you got guys that pretty much have to play and defend everywhere on the court. So that's going to take some time to adjust to, of course. And then you've got no home cooking, right? You're playing out of Tampa, and then coming off an abbreviated off season, so it took some time to work things out. But I think under Nick Nurse's guidance, they're going to continue this upward trajectory, and we're seeing really good development. The 3 aren't going anywhere. Yeah, Siakam, OG, and Fred VanVleet are not going anywhere. So as long as they're in the mix, they're going to be able to field a pretty competitive team. And I honestly think this level of play is where they should be. So I'm not surprised that they're here. And I think that they'll continue winning, and they'll be playing for a home court position. I think a top 4 position, that is, by the time that the regular season is through.
All right. Looking forward to it. And you know what? That'll do it for tonight's episode of Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. Thank you so much for joining Mike and I yap at you about sports for an hour. We are going to finish things off with a little moment of zen. David Pasternak.
Oh, yeah. You see the outfits, by the way?
Oh, my God.
The retro, they look
fantastic.
Good. Oh, yeah.
And that didn't end after the game. David Pasternak donning some bright pink framed sunglasses for the post-game interview, and a little bit miffed at the interviewers for making him miss his favorite bop post-game. We'll talk to you next week on Cabin Sports Radio.
Why are you wearing the glasses now? I assume it's not sunny, or is it just you enjoy having them on?
Well, we were listening Barbie Girl before you guys asked me to the media, so I was kind of dancing with these glasses out in the locker room, and then you guys ruined it, and I had to go answer the question, so I missed the Barbie Girl song, and who knows what's going to be on when I come back.